listening to the Arsenal Therapy Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Arsenal Therapy Podcast. My name is Farhan, also known as Gunner since '96. And as always, joining me here this evening is Adam Keys. Adam, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so starting you off with a fairly easy question. How shit were both sides on a scale of 1 to 10?
I thought we were both. I thought it was a really good game. So I thought we were fantastic. So
1?
So I'm gonna have to go 1 because I thought we were fantastic. So yeah.
Did it matter in the end?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really get the question. I thought we were brilliant. So
No, it didn't matter in the end. We won
yeah,
the 3 points. Of course, it didn't matter.
But it never matters in the end if you get 3 points in a game like this.
Exactly. And finally, have we found Havertz a new position?
And I always thought that was his position. So I guess yes, no, I'm not sure. So I'm going to say yes, just because.
All right, look. Yeah, just because Mikel Arteta usually likes to play him out wide, we know. Or not necessarily out wide, but left
That
8.
8 role.
Okay. That 8 role. Right, so, Adam, welcome back. And this time we are experiencing a winning feeling, quite a significant winning feeling as well. I think we both viewed the game through different lenses, so this is going to be a really interesting episode to hear from you how you felt about the performance. But ultimately, I should caveat that by saying it doesn't matter because we got the 3 points. And that was the most important thing. So we're recording straight after the game. It's maybe been half an hour since the final whistle's gone. Try and summarize how you're feeling in one word.
Buzzing. Absolutely buzzing. What about you?
So that's 3. No, that's
I'm not.
2.
The word is buzzing. I'm just really
Okay.
happy. So yeah.
My word, if I had to pick one to describe how I'm feeling right now, is content. No, that's there's no word to describe how I'm feeling. Sky high, just
Electric.
on top of the world. We've just, do you know what we've done? We've broken the mental barrier, right? So last season we started the season off really strong, and we doubted everyone wrong, and we announced ourselves as title contenders gradually. There was no single moment where we announced ourselves. I feel like this is the moment where we finally get to see the Arsenal we've been waiting for. Because I've been saying this every week, but I don't feel like we're yet to see the best version of ourselves. Maybe that's down to a number of different factors like injuries, like new players, and finding, the right position for certain players, and obviously the goalkeeping situation as well. But that, no matter how we got it done, a win against City was always going to propel us from here to right up here. And we are right up there. We're top of the league now. I mean, we don't need to consider Spurs because they're not title contenders. But we're there. We're top of the league, right? With an international break, we're at the top. We've done it. We've beaten City. We're still undefeated in the league. They've now lost 2 games. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Okay. But it didn't all go as smooth as we thought it would. I mean, it started off with a pretty dodgy starting lineup. So why don't you talk me through your thoughts when the starting lineup came out?
My only, so obviously leaked lineups and so on had it out before the game, but so my only concern was Saka not playing. I like Jorginho being in the team. As you know, I'm a huge fan of his. He's such an experienced player, great mind. He can just keep things ticking all day. So I really like the fact that we went for 2 solid 6s and had that double pivot instead of going with a very attacking team. Pep did it last year against us. He went for a double pivot at the Emirates, or at the Etihad, and we didn't expect it, and he won the game because of it. But yeah, I like the fact that Arteta looked at not having Saka and the team he played, and I'll be honest, all in all, it was one of those without Saka, I didn't have the confidence that I had 6 hours ago when I thought he was going to be playing. But look, it worked out. And all in all, I was happy enough with the lineup. It was one, it definitely threw me. But it was also the front three that played was the one that we said we would go for if Saka wasn't fit when we did the preview show. The back five was who we thought we would play. And it was really only Jorginho coming in that was the only thing that we didn't expect. So I really thought Partey would have got the nod today, but maybe just cautiously easing them back in. But yeah, I was happy with the team all in all. How did you feel? Because you're a little less keen on Jorginho, let's just say.
Yeah, well, I'm very much in the same camp as you. I was pretty satisfied with the starting lineup, and there was a lot of unsatisfactory, comments and commentary going around on Twitter and etc. People not happy that Jorginho's there. People not happy that Saka's not playing. People not happy that if Martinelli and Partey are available, then why are they not in the squad, etc., etc. I thought it was a very intelligent decision, very sensible decision to not put either Partey or Martinelli in the starting lineup for a game of this magnitude, having not played, obviously, since they've been injured. We saw what happens when you do put a player straight back in the starting lineup without easing them in with Trossard against Lens. And so, yeah, we can't really... At this stage, we couldn't really be picky and make any complaints because we had to make do what we had. And so I would rather have had Jorginho play there instead of Havertz. I would rather have had Trossard play out wide. The only complaint that I had is that we didn't play Jesus down the middle. I would have liked to have seen, I think we would have seen more impact. There would have been more directness, a bit of penetration with him going down the middle. And actually, when we go on to talk about the game, he did look pretty uncomfortable down the right-hand side. He looked one of the better players of the front three, but I felt like if we had played him down the middle and Eddie out wide, we would have seen a little bit more fluidity. And other than that, though, your perfect back line, Raya in goal as well, who we're going to talk about, but on paper, it will look pretty good. So... and we knew going into this game that City were going to be without De Bruyne, they were going to be without Rodri, and actually, to our surprise, he didn't put Calvin Phillips on. Instead, he decided to play 18-year-old Rico. What's his face?
Because Calvin
Rico
shit, man.
Lewis. Yeah, exactly.
But Rico Lewis, what a player, by the way! Just such a big talent. So yeah, but. I wasn't surprised to see Phillips not play, just because I don't think he's anywhere near good enough to play for Man City. So it's very telling that Rodri's out and he's not getting a look in.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's go in to talk about the game. The opening first 10 minutes of that game, Adam, where I expected things to be a little bit cagey, and it was. Arsenal very much measured in their press, not as aggressive as I would have liked them to be. And for someone like me to watch a game like this, it can be very difficult because I'm one of those stubborn fans who want Arsenal to play in a particular style which befits them. I want to see them playing aggressively. I want to see them imposing themselves on their opposition. I understand why it wasn't the case for City, but it became very clear early on that actually City were adopting to play in a very similar style that we were, which was very measured, very controlled, finding the right pass at the right time. But it didn't make things any easier when David Raya started to fumble things. Look, there's no doubt, having watched that game, that Raya had a very difficult afternoon. The first his kick, the first mistake he makes in the opening 3 minutes, his kick given straight to a City player, then Rice unfortunately misplacing a pass to Zinchenko, I believe, leads to a City corner. Ake has a chance in the opening 5 minutes, 5 yards out, which goes over the bar. And you're thinking to yourselves, hold on a minute, what is going on here? So, yeah, summarise that opening sort of 5-ish minutes, because a lot did happen, and Arsenal were kind of on the back foot, weren't they?
Yeah, we started really, really nervously, and it was a lot of it was coming from Raya. He had a very, very poor start to the game, and his kicking was off. But I didn't feel it was just him. I think there was a real nervousness about the team, the way we started the game. And I think if that Aki chance goes in, very, very different game. We almost needed it to happen. So the fact that we got away with it, it seemed to waken the whole team up. And we was still cagey after that for, it was really the first 20 minutes, but we did become more settled after that one. A great header from Rice off the line, who, again, I thought he had 2 or 3 mistakes very early on in the first 5 minutes, which was very unlike him. And it was all there was a nervousness from Declan Rice that I haven't seen before, and it lasted for about 4, maybe 5 minutes, and then the minute he headed that ball off the line, different player, beast mode came out, and he became Declan Rice again. But yeah, I was heart in my mouth, that kind of feeling very early on. It was like, why have we started like this? We're really gonna struggle here. And it's like, we need to switch on fast. We need to get moving, get together, and kind of start playing the way we can. And it felt like we were playing the occasion rather than the team. And City's pressing has changed a lot. So in the same way ours has, I keep saying about this evolution of pressing. And it's City aren't pressing the way they were as a unit. But the minute that nervousness came into the Arsenal team, City started hunting us. They were going at us. They were really going in on Raya. They were pushing. Every time he got near the ball, the pressure was there. They pressed him. They were trying to pin us back as far as they could, and it was really aggressive, hard running, and very, very coordinated pressing from them in a way that they haven't really been doing this season, and kind of stopped doing towards the end, kind of middle of last season. And this is all coming from De Zerbi. Where teams are putting their foot in the ball and encouraging the press. So we're seeing teams press less and less as a result. The top teams, because everyone can play through it now. And pressing now in the current form has been going for about a decade. So you have to remember the likes of William Saliba grew up playing against pressing attackers. So they're used to it. And that's why it's changed. But those first 5 minutes, City were really going at us. They were chasing. They were running at us hard. They were really, really trying to hunt in packs and win that ball back in the way we have seen them do in the past. So honestly, it was a scary opening 5 minutes, and one that I was just really glad to see us finally calm down after Rice headed that ball off the line.
Yeah, I don't think there was anyone really looking confident of themselves. The only real one who was consistent across that 90 minutes was William Saliba, who was, once again, phenomenal, world class. Had Haaland in his pocket pretty much the whole game, and it wasn't as if Haaland had a poor performance. You could see that he was trying to battle with Saliba, oftentimes, losing those battles. It took us about 8 minutes before finally we started to open them up a little bit. There was a moment where a lovely crossfield pass from Trossard finds Jesus out on the right-hand side, charges into the City box, has a shot, but it's blocked out for a corner. And, I get the impression that me and you were going to have different perspectives of how the game unfolded and what we could have done better, or whether it was a perfect game plan. I felt like there were a number of players, because of that nervousness, because of the anxiety going around, whether it was due to mistakes being made or just the fact that we were playing at such a flat tempo, no one really wanted to take any risk. And I appreciate why you wouldn't want to do that, but we need to remember here that we're playing against a City side who just lost to Wolves, who are without De Bruyne and Rodri, two of their most creative and technical players. They looked really poor as well. And I don't think it was purposely done by Pep to say to them, right, guys, go out there, be patient, try and build slowly, don't penetrate as quickly as you usually do. I think that fluidity was lost because in the middle of the pitch, you don't have a controller. You don't have someone who's dictating the tempo and the way that and the rhythm and the way that the City players usually play. And I understand, I get it, that the pressing of the game has changed. But ultimately, we know that the only way to put teams under pressure is to play with a little bit of tempo, with that tiny bit of intensity. It was clear to me from very beginning, probably 10-15 minutes, that Arteta's strict instructions were for Eddie and Odegaard to not press, to stand your ground and to wait and be patient. For me, I don't know, it didn't sit right with me, and I get it. It's high risk, high reward kind of football. Whereas in a game like this, maybe it's wise not to play in that kind of style. But yeah, it didn't help either when we had players like Jorginho picking up yellow cards for making silly little fouls inside of 12 minutes, really unnecessary. But ultimately, yeah, go on.
No, the Jorginho yellow, to be honest, I felt it was a necessary foul because Saliba actually should have been much more alive to that. And he's kind of dropped back, and it's one of those, if Jorginho doesn't pull him down there, Jorginho is never going to win a foot race with Foden. He's too fast, and we've seen Jorginho run. He's pulling a caravan every time he goes. But it kind of felt like one of those, the last thing you want is Phil Foden running into open space. We saw that in the Community Shield when Foden did that, where he goes and he starts muttering, and he's so good at picking those the right passes in the final third that I felt Jorginho needed to make that foul. However, it did put us under pressure, and it was one of those. It was another heart and mouth moment for me because I was thinking, this is one of those against that City midfield with so much quality. How do you manage the game with a player like Jorginho that doesn't have the legs on a yellow? No bother. He did it superbly, but it didn't help with the nervousness. And the nervousness of the crowd you could really feel on the TV as well. So it was only at the end of the game that it really came alive. But it was one of those, I think every fan in that stadium, because it's 12 defeats on the bounce to City. The last time we beat them, Pellegrini was in charge, in the league that is, which you can understand the nervousness. We know we're good, but we needed that today. We absolutely needed that win.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the game just never really took off in that first half. I don't know about you, but I felt like it was just being played at the same tempo. Raya coming close to on a number of occasions in that first half, getting away with it as well. Alvarez, I think at one point closing him down, the shot or the contact hitting the side netting. But yeah, it just never looked like that we were. Yeah, heart and mouth. I just felt like there was just way too many of those moments, like unnecessary moments. Now, if you're going to play the pass, just play it. Why? Why do you think we were so reluctant to release the ball earlier than we usually do? Because there were a lot of hesitant moments where the players were refusing to release the ball.
I think Raya was slow at releasing it at the back, and that definitely led to a nervousness. And I think he didn't do a great job at just releasing it quickly, and I think that might have helped get his confidence restored and so on. But outside that, I thought we were actually moving the ball pretty well. The issue, and both sides faced this, was the minute either team lost possession, they were straight back in their units. Both teams were so well drilled off the ball in terms of getting back. And City, I agree with you about Rodri and that tempo set. Rodri's their metronome. He just keeps getting it. He recycles play better than anyone. He just keeps the ball moving. He's brilliant. I could rave all day about Rodri. I think he's phenomenal. However, I thought Bernardo did a good job at 6. I was surprised to see how comfortable he looked in that role, but the kid is insanely intelligent. So I think the big thing was we were seeing both teams having to turn back, and that was a result of both teams being so well organised and so well drilled defensively. And it's important to remember as well that football's played at two ends of the pitch. It's like creating chances is only part of the game of football. The big reason that teams win titles and are successful is because of defensive structures and all those things off the ball that shut down the opposition. And this is something that we've spent 20 years moaning about Arsenal being too open. And that was our first clean sheet at the Emirates today. It was a really, really disciplined, organised performance. And I think we saw it from City as well. So I thought both teams were fantastic in terms of their organisation. It was very, very like the Community Shield, which, although I think there was a few more chances in that game, obviously the Havertz one was the big one. But all in all, it was one of those performances that I just felt that because of the defensive structure that we had and City also had, you got to a certain point of the pitch and it was so hard to find space. Like Odegaard was dropping deeper and deeper to try and get on the ball. And it was only in the second half, really, that it did open up a bit. But both teams had the same issues. And it made me feel really good about us just as a disciplined, organised team, because I thought, look at the way we're making City play. Yes, City are doing that to us, but we expect that from City. We know how good Man City are, but that was a real affirmation for me that we are here. We are good enough. They're not coming at us with the kind of fire and fury that they did in the past, because they know if they leave space at the other end, we can punish them. So there was a real respect between the sides. And I think as well with the top two teams in the league, we're always going to have the comparison to Liverpool and City, and those games were full of fire and pace and excitement. But actually, that's because of Klopp. That's because Liverpool are just relentless. They just keep coming at you. And it's like a lot of pace, a lot of hard running, a lot of like directness. And that naturally led to City having a lot of attacking space to play into. Whereas Pep and Arteta are very similar. People don't want to admit it because it's like, it seems like a cliche. Arteta was learned from Pep, but actually their minds work very, very similarly. And we know that they're two managers that just want control at all times. And that's what we saw today was both teams, the minute they got the ball, it was trying to re-establish control rather than, if that's the Jurgen Klopp team, he wants his team going straight in, bang, 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 keep overlapping, trying to overload the box, trying to maximize the threat and really going at the teams, which is why Liverpool end up with two fullbacks at the other end of the pitch. But whereas today, that was a game of control. And I think that's a big part of why, when you say about players taking time on the ball, it was more every passing lane was being closed off. Whenever they had the ball, people were putting pressure on. And then similarly, choosing to sit off. So there was that balance. It was real targeted pressing. So maybe three players would run at one player versus a few years ago where it would just be like two rows of three coming at you. Whereas if you've got an Ederson in your team, he can pop that ball anywhere around the park, and that makes it very difficult to press.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be rewatching this game because I think this is a great case study for how the game will eventually maybe be played, probably by the top sides like your Arsenals and your Cities. That's not a normal game of football. I mean, I remember watching that game in the first half and feeling really uncomfortable because of how passive both teams were being, and the atmosphere didn't help in the stadium either. Like really just quiet and just, fans clearly feeling the nerves as well. But it did start to open up a little bit. So we did have our chances, and I feel like when we did get those chances, we didn't make the most out of it, especially through the middle. There was a moment where Diaz makes a mistake following a ball that puts Eddie Nketiah in on goal, and the finishing was far from spectacular. Yeah, dragged wide and lashed at it.
Yeah,
and I remember, it feels silly for me to complain about anything because we got the 3 points, but I think rightfully so, we need to be critical of these performances so that when we move forward, we can be relentless, ruthless, and finish teams off like the way we should have done at the back end of last season. But I felt like someone like Eddie Nketiah really struggled to prove to me that he's good enough to play as our number 9. I mean, I don't know about you, but those kind of moments where you have half a chance or you have an opportunity to turn a player and run into the box, just nothing really came off. Am I being too harsh on him, or do you feel like
I thought he
it's time for Arteta? Really? I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. I just couldn't see it. Yeah,
that shot he shouldn't have hit the shot. He doesn't have the ball under control. It's too far away from him. His technique's all off because it's too far away from him. He lashes at it. But in terms of his running, his hold-up play, and just his ability to just retain the ball and bring people in, I thought he had a good performance today. And I would have liked to see a bit more directness in his game, but Like, these are things that he's learning. And when you compare it to Haaland at the other end, I mean, Haaland didn't look like the best striker in the world today. And you have to remember the
Yeah.
quality of the opposition as well. So, as I say, football's played at two ends. And look at that City team. They've phenomenal defenders in the team, and they've just gone out and spent 100 million on Vardiol. So they had a really, really rock solid back four today. Kyle Walker was immense. Ake, Vardiol, Ruben Diaz. As Neville said in the commentary, that is essentially four centre backs, because Walker doesn't bomb up and down anymore like he used to. So Nketiah had a really tough day with what he had to face, and I thought that he ran tirelessly. He worked his socks off, and by the time he actually came off, I thought he looked really tired, and could probably have done with coming off 5 minutes earlier, just because he did look like he was really blowing there. He was just he was starting to struggle at that point of the game, and that's just because of the intensity that he played with. But so yeah, I think it is, you have to look at not just what one side does, but how the game unfolds. And that was two teams that they do have a slightly better side than us. I think there's no shame in admitting that. They've just won the treble, and they also have this huge winning experience that we don't have. So the organisation levels, it really cancelled out the likes of Foden, Odegaard at times, and those really creative players. Even Kovacic has got a lot of creativity in his game, wasn't able to do anything today. And that doesn't help a player like Eddie Nketiah, who is making those runs, who is really trying and working hard. If you're not getting the chances, and you're facing a very, very rigid back four every time, it's tough for a lone striker to really do much more than Eddie did today.
Yeah, I guess time will tell. But yeah, like I said, I'm far from impressed with, I guess, the basics. I understand that when you're playing against a back four like that, it's really difficult. But if you're playing for Arsenal, and if you want to be the number 9, you're really going to have to do the basics really, really well. And I felt like if Jesus was in there, that first touch would have been better. The first action would have been better. He would have been a little bit more sharper, just a little bit more, I want to have confidence in my striker. And when you're playing against a City side who give very little away, when we get into good areas, you want to think that your number 9 is able to cause some sort of a threat. Before we continue, did you feel like going into this game, Arsenal needed to get the 3 points? Just based on the fact that they were without Rodri and De Bruyne, and this was such a great opportunity for us to, play them with a weakened side.
I think we needed that 3 points for us mentally. However, when I would have taken a draw from that game, I felt we needed not to get beat more than we needed to win it. Obviously, we've won it. I'm buzzing that we've won it. I think it was one of those games I don't think either side really deserved to lose it, and it was always going to be something like what happened that decided that game. Usually in these games it goes against us, so it's just another example of how we've grown. But the 3 points for our belief, and I think just perception of who Arsenal are and what Arsenal are, is massive. Because if you look at games, the old cliche, and we all say it about winning games in the tunnel, it's that we've already shown that we can beat everyone. Arteta's beaten every team in the league except City. So going into that game, there was a point to prove. There is something like, we are good enough. We're here. This team has arrived. It's ready to compete and challenge for the title. And to do so, we're ready to beat Man City. When we play Chelsea in a couple of weeks, those Chelsea players are all going to be looking at this Arsenal team and thinking they've just beat City.
Yeah.
This is a top side. So it's not just like kind of us against City. There is something psychologically when you play other teams and they know you can go toe to toe with City. It's like when we played Liverpool all those years, you knew how good they were. And I honestly was so nervous every time we played Liverpool in the league over the last 5 years, because I thought this could be 8-0, but they're that good. And a big part of that's psychological. And that feeds into players, it feeds into the atmospheres and the ground and everything. And I think this is a big stepping stone for us, that we've shown that we can beat City. And it wasn't just that we beat City. I'm actually glad that Michael Oliver lost his balls and didn't send Kovacic off, because it showed we could not just beat them 11 against 11 in a game where the biggest decision of the match went against us, and we still managed to come out as winners. So I think that's a huge statement that we've just put down today, and one that, like, as I say, I would have taken a draw, but I think that's more than just a win today.
Yeah, yeah. When you mention the psychological advantage and the boost, this is why I felt like Arsenal needed to get the win. A draw wouldn't have been enough, because it wouldn't have broken that glass ceiling. It wouldn't have allowed us to spur on through the season and start to believe. Because we can be good for 80% of the season, but if those last 10 games are a repeat of what we saw last season, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, at the end of the day, second place trophy doesn't really exist. It's all but that, So now we've beaten City. Every team playing us will have that fear factor, and they will have their backs against us, and they will want to play in a low block, and that suits us perfectly because we're able to break teams down that play in a low block. What makes me nervous is when teams go toe-to-toe, because oftentimes when we do make sloppy mistakes, it gives it away, give away an opportunity, an odd chance, just like City did against Wolves, and then, you lose one game, and then all of a sudden, it's like a domino effect. And football is just so, it's so up and down, it's so, what's the word I'm looking for? Sporadic. It's like you never know. One week you're going to win a game, and then it can take a moment of madness, or a moment of genius to kind of swing the pendulum. There was a key moment that you mentioned in the game which could have dictated how the result went, or how the outcome of the game would have been, and that was the Kovacic foul on Odegaard. A really bad foul as well. Slides in, studs up, and it's not one of those challenges where it makes contact with the player's ankle. It was actually at the back of his Achilles heel, which is a really dangerous sort of challenge to make. If you don't get it right, we've seen what can go wrong when players injure that part of their foot. So Kovac is really lucky to be only given a yellow card, and then moments after that, he then makes a kind of similar foul on Rice. Both of those, in my opinion, are red card offences. But yeah, talk me through. I know you just mentioned, you're quite happy that he was left on the pitch. But how are you feeling when you found out that he was still on the pitch after that first half had finished?
Obviously, I wanted him sent off at the time, and I still think it's a crazy decision that he wasn't. I think it's one of those. Probably is a red. I think Gary Neville summed it up. I thought Neville's commentary was actually pretty bang on today with some things. There were other things I wasn't sure of, but he was like, it's very much an orange. It's one of those. Is it a red? It's definitely a very strong yellow. And then he said, he was like, Kovacic needs to be very careful out there, because if he makes a soft foul or anything, he has to be sent off now. And then 2 minutes later, he makes that. I didn't think, honestly, the second one was more than a yellow card. I thought it was, he's a bit late, he catches him. It's a yellow card all day long. And it's one of those that if he wasn't on a yellow card, the ref gives that as a yellow all day. Oliver lost his balls in that moment. He was a coward. He failed to stand up and make a big decision in a game that would have ultimately changed the game. Because when City had Rodri sent off 2 weeks ago, they dropped into a low block against Forest, and it completely changed how they played. So for them to lose Kovacic, a player with huge experience in that game, and have Bernardo sitting with Rico Lewis in midfield, that would have completely changed how they played, and it would have very much put the game into our hands. So it was a shocking decision from Oliver, and I don't understand why he was so quick to make that decision. Straight away he was like, nope, no foul, or no card, and he was like telling everyone he wasn't going to send him off. And it was like, actually, surely just a minute to think, process what's just happened, and actually realize he's just had a really bad foul that's been checked for VAR by VAR for serious foul play, and then he makes another challenge. He has to go. So I just completely bemused at how Oliver felt that was not a yellow card, because Kovacic had to walk at that point, and it was just absolutely bizarre that he stayed on the pitch.
Yeah. We were all kind of feeling the same going into the at half time when the halftime whistle went. Um, just quickly before we move on to the second half, did you feel like, because as I was watching the game, there were obviously moments where we could have posed a counter-attacking threat. Yeah, there were moments in the game where City would lose the ball cheaply in our half, or we'd do something really well, especially with Rice helping in the back there with Saliba and Gabriel. Did you notice at any time the lack of wanting to break? And if so, why do you think we were so reluctant to pose a quick counter-attacking threat? Because it felt like they were purposely trying to slow down the game when they could have punished them if they wanted to.
Yeah, I think it was control. Tactics, both teams wanted control in that game. That's what I was saying about Klopp. When Klopp wins the ball, the whole team counters. They have come at you with so much pace and fury, and they really want to hit you in those moments. With Arsenal and City, both teams want to control the game and suffocate the other team. And last year, I think we would have saw more of that. However, it's important to look at the players we've got as well. We don't really have any pacey players except for Martinelli. Nketiah is quick, but he's not a lightning counter-attacking type striker. Jesus, again, he's quick, but he's not a really hard runner and doesn't have that real pace to burn. So I think both Trossard on the left, we know he's got a limited amount of pace, and it's not in his game to play that real counter-attacking football. And I think that's why we wanted Mudryk so much, was to have that option that we could hit teams more on the counter. And I think that's something that we do need to bring into the side, is just a bit more pace, because we saw when Martinelli came on that we were able to hit them on the counter. We were able to just give them something different. And even at fullback, Zinchenko's not the quickest. And like, if you compare it to when we had Clichy at left back, lightning quick. And we've had other players down the years as well that have been really, really quick, that have been able to give us that pace on the counter. Bellerin could do it on the right and so on. But Ben White is quick. He's not a kind of, again, lightning quick fullback that will hit you, like will be able to really break forward in that counter-attacking motion. But I do think it's tactical. I think you're coached so much not to hit teams on the counter. And ultimately both teams wanted to control that game. And it felt for a lot of it that there was a fear of making mistakes. And we know counter-attacking football does leave you exposed at the other end. So whilst you're obviously attacking the fact that they've left space, it does leave you susceptible at the other end to be countered yourself. So yeah, that's, I think, a mix of the players that we had on the pitch and the tactical decision from Arteta in terms of why we weren't countering them. But I agree, I would like to see a bit more of it, but I think it's very tactical in that sense.
Okay. All right. So that sound can only mean one thing. We've arrived at the halfway point of the show. Well, I'll be taking you, Adam, and the listeners through to the second half of the show. Wow. How invigorating. Well, we were met by a very pleasant surprise in the opening, just before the second half started. Martinelli coming on for Trossard. Did you feel like a change was going to be made? I remember making a note of this in the first half, saying we have to make a change in the second half. What are your thoughts?
I was talking to my dad at half time, and I said to him, I was like, I can imagine Trossard staying on for another 10, maybe 15 minutes, and Martinelli coming on. I feel that's the threat we need on the left. And then, obviously, but as we were still on the phone, Martinelli pops up stripped down, ready to go, and it's like, great, perfect. Arteta's going for this. So, really pleased to see him coming on. I thought it was just what we needed, and bringing him on at half time as well. was kind of the perfect time. It gave him plenty of time to get into the game, and he made pretty much an immediate impact when he came on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the second half started off with a bit more zip, a bit more intensity. Nevertheless, Raya giving us all, heart attacks, mini heart attacks, causing, I think Alvarez to slide in very late on, but at that point he looked pretty comfortable to get away with it as well. But yeah, Martinelli coming on, causing an early chance, ball into the back post, puts a ball into the back post for Jesus, who couldn't make any contact, but showing signs that this is what we needed. In the first half, this is what we need, and this is why I can't buy the argument that you're putting forward, which is that it was an incredibly well strategically organised game of football. I genuinely believe that City were poor and Arsenal needed to take advantage of that, and they didn't. And with someone like Martinelli, I felt like it was proof that you put on someone who's going to be an agitator, who's going to be a little bit chaotic, who's going to test your back line, and when it comes to it, you better be ready. And I just didn't feel like City were prepared for it. Came on, and having said that, though, it did die back down quite quickly. I think it's after the opening 10 minutes of that second half, things began to sort of seep back into the same old routines of the first half. But yeah, do you have any comments about the opening 10 minutes? Anything that you noticed or anything that you were quite impressed by?
We started well. First few minutes, there was a directness. Declan Rice played that lovely ball into Martinelli. He gets it in his left foot, drops the shoulder, and there's enough venom on that shot, but it's a comfortable save for Ederson, who didn't have a huge amount to do today. And I thought he was brilliant with his feet, Ederson, but it was one of those, we came out with a bit more aggression, a bit more zip to our play, and we saw Rice really starting to step up in the second half. We saw Jorginho. I thought Jorginho was just really good all day, and he was very much one of our main creative forces in the first half. But Odegaard's starting to get a bit more involved, and I was impressed with how we started. I thought we came out looking ready, but once again, we came out looking very organised as well. And it was one of those, look, it was always going to be a game where there was going to be some small moment that was going to change it, and it was so tense. It did feel like it could go either way. When both teams went forward, it did feel like one of those games where one goal was going to decide it.
Yeah, and I guess what would you say was the moment where the game changed? Because I felt like there was a moment. There was a specific moment where, City threw it away, basically.
No, I don't think City threw it away at all. I thought, Saliba was just an absolute monster today. It was after about the 20-minute mark we started playing and we settled ourselves and we were able to get a hold of the ball. But if you look at that game, possession numbers, we had it was pretty even, 49-51. We had a lot more shots than City. We had 12 compared to 4. Only 2 shots on target. They only had 1. But again, we had 4 blocked shots. And I felt we posed more attacking threat. But Saliba had Haaland in his pocket today. He didn't have to make a tackle. Haaland in the Community Shield actually looked scared of Saliba. It's the first time I've seen Haaland really struggle against a defender. He had a couple of good moments in the first half where he did well, held it up, and laid off a pass to his teammates. But I think it was one of those that we, in the second half when we came out, we had really nullified that main threat of Haaland, and Saliba and Gabriel as well, who was again exceptional. They really had that City attack almost like they created doubt because they were so solid. And that's something that we see when teams are really good defensively and really well organised and aggressive and winning their duels. It does make attackers kind of creates that bit of doubt in them. In the same way, when you've got a defender not playing well, it can completely unsettle a back line. When a defence is really rock solid, it does make players think twice. They don't play as instinctively. And I think we were able to kill City's threat. And I don't think there's a single moment that I can pinpoint that, I guess, I didn't think City threw the game away. But so I'm intrigued to hear what yours is.
Yeah, so I don't know if you remember, but very early on, one manager was always going to do it, and Pep was the one who decided to make the first move by making his changes. He made 3 changes, and I think those 3 changes cost him the game, because those substitutes that came on did more harm than good. In particular, Doku, who I was frightened to see come on. And then when I realised that he was moving from the right-hand flank to the left-hand flank and not being able to do much on either side, but then defensively being as hopeless as he was, it gave me hope. And then moments later, Arteta decided to bring on his 3, which was Tomiyasu, Havertz and Partey. And that's when really the game changed and it looked like that we were going to be getting the winner, because up until the changes were made, it did seem like very even. It was pretty much a replica of what had happened in the first half. Both teams cancelling each other out, no one really biting the bullet to impose themselves. It was a game that was being played at a snail's pace. And yeah, so the moment that Pep decides that he's going to bring his 3 men on, I felt like Doku tried to, he tried to replicate what Martinelli did, which was inject a bit of chaos, especially on the edge of our box. But defensively, we were sound, really, really good. And there was a moment as well where City had like 10 minutes of possession. They were just like passing the ball around. It made me think back to the goal that they scored where they had like a ridiculous amount of passes. I think it was like 30 plus passes. I was just hoping that it wasn't going to come to that. But yeah, that's when I thought that the game was ultimately, it had changed on its head. And it was always going to happen because the 11 that we put out to the 11 that they put out, the game was just far too, what's the word? Static. Is that the word? It was just
I
cancelling
think
each other out.
Yeah, look, and that's what I say about football being played at both ends of the pitch, and there's a defensive and attacking side to football, and both teams did cancel each other out. That was 2 top teams cancelling each other out. Like Diego Simeone's made a career of this because he is so good at nullifying teams, and he plays much more defensive football than this. But it is interesting what you're saying about the number of passes City had. Today, City played 451 passes. We played 431. The game was far more even than I think it appeared at times. And I think that is the nervous Arsenal fans in us, that we are all so used to our team crumbling, and we're not used to going toe-to-toe with City like this. And what we saw today was a really grown-up game of football, and 2 teams that were just so tactically astute that it makes for, I guess, it's not the nicest game to watch for the neutral, but I loved watching that because all the nerdy things that I see in games, like players taking that step forward to cut out a passing lane, they're things that involve real intelligence from players, but it looks like an attacker is kind of taking too long on the ball, taking those extra touches. But actually, a big part of that is someone literally just taking that step forward, seeing where they're going to pass, cutting it out, and the player having the intelligence to spot the blocker and realise that pass isn't going to go. And we saw it in the Community Shield. There was times where Foden was doing it really well, where he would just take that step forward and it would completely cut out a pass that Thomas Partey had and result in him taking a step infield and rethinking his options. And again, that's what we saw from both sides today. And I think that's a big reason why the game was so tactical and appeared slow at times, because both teams were just cancelling each other out. The off-the-ball work was just of an elite level today. And it was at a really high level. The big thing was concentration. If you want to play that type of football, every player on the field has to be switched on. And ultimately, they were so switched on that it's a mistake that, not even a mistake, it was one of those, it was really unlucky for Nathan Ake. But it's that's the moment that decides a game at that level with that level of concentration and discipline throughout the team.
Yeah. Okay, so Arteta makes his changes. Tomiyasu, Havertz, Partey coming on for Zinchenko, Nketiah and Jorginho. How much of an impact did those substitutions make?
I think it came, as I said, I would have probably taken Nketiah off 10 minutes earlier because I thought he was really struggling at the point because he just looked exhausted. And but I thought the changes were right. It was one of those, whenever three players line up for Arsenal, and in your head you're like Nketiah, Zinchenko, and Jorginho, but then Arteta thinks something different, and so when those three players lined up, I was thinking that's exactly what we need at this time of the game, and I was hoping that the three players that did come off actually would have come off. So there was a relief in me that Arteta was actually making the choices that I think we all knew he should make. And I thought the timing was right. All three of them had an impact. I thought Partey just gave us something different to what Jorginho had. And it was with Jorginho being on that yellow as the game went on, I was getting a bit worried, thinking all it takes is one loose foul, someone trips over your foot. He does have a tendency to grab players, and whilst I think he's got the experience and we know how good he is, all it takes is that snap decision where it doesn't go your way and you get sent off. So there was a worry. I think getting him off at that time was perfect timing. He looked disappointed to come off as well because I thought he had a really good afternoon. But Zinchenko coming off when he did, they had brought Doku on, and it's interesting that when the minute Tomiyasu came on the pitch, they stuck Doku on the left, thinking they would get more change out of Ben White, which they didn't at all. And it was one, I think Arteta got his subs bang on the money today, and Havertz had a good impact.
Yeah.
And I think the more you watch Havertz, the more it's clear that he's a striker. So even one of the biggest criticisms that Havertz gets is when he gets that ball in the half space and there is space behind him, rather than taking it on the half turn like a midfielder, he controls it with his back to goal and knocks it off to a teammate. That's 3 years of being coached to play 9. And any striker is taught from a very young age, play with your back to goal. Your first instinct should be to knock it to a teammate, not to wriggle and turn and run into that space, because 9 times out of 10, the defender's going to win the ball. So it takes... Gabriel Jesus can do it, but he's one of the few that can do that. And that's just because he's a horrible player to play against. He's got that Samba-style football in him. But I think, look, for me, Havertz is a striker. I've never seen him as a midfielder. I was very clear on that during the summer when we were linked to him. And I think today showed just how good he can be up front for us. And those changes, right time, and obviously we won the game as a result of 3 substitutes. So yeah.
Arteta, it was all 3 of those subs that made an impact.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Arteta deserves the praise for bringing those 3 players on, and those 3 players were instrumental when they came on. Tomiyasu was, playing high up the pitch. At some moments, I was questioning whether he needed to be so high up the pitch. Havertz obviously playing as the centre forward, and as you mentioned, playing that centre forward role really, really well. If there's one thing that Havertz has done really well at Arsenal up until this point, is his first touches. His first touches have often been really, really good. Whether it's receiving it from aerially or receiving it from a teammate, it's often the passes that he does really well, like just the simple things. And the simple things as a centre forward, as you said, is to just lay it off to a teammate, open up the spaces, keep the opportunity alive. And yeah, Thomas Partey as well. One of the things that I've really missed from that position of the pitch is just playing those neat passes, picking out those unconventional passes that most players aren't capable of, because players naturally want to play the simple pass, whereas he sees the corner from the corner of his eye, someone standing next to him. Rather than playing it to the player in front of him, he'll play it to the side. And it's just, cutting, especially in those tight spaces. And that's something that I noticed when he came on in the latter stages of the game, when things started to get a little bit more tasty. Lots of quick passes inside tight spaces, and he's perfect for them, and it worked really, really well. The tempo of the game picked up as well, and it looked like with the amount of possession that we had in the final third of their half, it seemed like we were working towards getting a goal anyway, and eventually it came. And I don't remember the goal as vividly as maybe I should, because most of the memories taken up in my head are the aftermath of what happened when the ball went in the back of the net. But I do remember it being quite a lengthy play, quite a lengthy build-up before Martinelli obviously decided to cut in and have that shot. So maybe you can talk me through the goal and how it came about.
So I always hate this question because I then try to rack my brain back to how the move started and so on. But it's one of those where we had regained a bit of control. We were passing the ball around. I think it's Saliba plays the long ball. No, it's Thomas Partey. Partey plays it forward. Lovely header from Tomiyasu into Havertz, and he does so well, exactly what you would want him to do in that position. He's got two centre halves beside him. He gets his body, he makes himself big, he plants his feet, makes sure that he's really solid, takes that ball, and he just lays it off perfectly for Martinelli. And it was one of those, like there's a couple of big bodies in the way that so it was asking a lot of Martinelli to hit the target from where he did. And like he strikes that ball. He's probably the player I would want that ball laid off to be in that zone where he's at when he hits it. It was just, he's one of the best ball strikers in our team. And look, that's his first goal of the season. Obviously, the one against Everton was chalked off. So he gets a massive slice of luck. It comes right off Ake's face, and that'll be a real stinger for him. And it was one of those, like, Ake had a really good game today, and he will be really disappointed with that. But it was a slice of luck that comes after a really disciplined performance. And I felt that we did so much good work today. We did so much right. We went toe-to-toe with them. And Martinelli was the agitator on the pitch. He was the player that was really trying to get things going. Jesus was doing it on the right. And in the first half, I didn't think Jesus was in the game enough. Second half, he was one of our best players. He was causing havoc down that right-hand side for them. And those touches in and around the box that we know he's so good at, some of the challenges he won. So whenever we brought Martinelli on, we had that threat on both sides, and it really livened up the game. And I don't think it came as a surprise that it was Martinelli that did break the deadlock, because he was the one player that you just felt he's just so direct, he's so energetic, and he was the one that was causing a lot of problems for them down that side. And yeah, just one of those moments when it goes in, there was like, it's gone in. You know, when it takes a second to register that it had actually gone in, and it's like jumping around. Euphoria. But then at the same time, the fear hit me, and I was like, this is Man City. It's like, calm down. We had this against Spurs. Calm down. And you're hoping that all the players, and then everyone runs at the corner to celebrate, and you just see them hugging the fans, and you wishing you were there. But at the same time, it's like, this is City. They can come back. Shit. Let's not like get carried away. I don't want to give myself like too much hope. And so, yeah, it's such a whirlwind of emotions whenever something like that happens. And yeah, I think on the balance, we deserved it. We did have a lot more shots than them. As I said, I don't think either team deserved to lose that game, but it was one of those, if there was one side, it was going to be us, because it was one of those games where we were creating a bit more than them. And I think defensively we were far better than them today, but we just kept going. And I think that's the big thing. We kept going. That's the most important thing in football, is keeping going. And we know this side won't give up. But to do it against City and not have to do it in the 95th minute, but to do it in the 82nd was very nice. And it also gave us enough time to show that we can hang on in a game, but also long enough that we didn't have to hang on for maybe half an hour, which would have been a very different story.
Yeah, it felt like a mature end to the game as opposed to, the dramatic ends that we're so used to seeing. I'll tell you what I loved about this goal, though. It wasn't the fact that Martinelli got the goal. It wasn't the fact that it came in the 83rd minute. It was the fact that all three players who were brought on the pitch were involved in that play.
Yeah.
It was a long Thomas Partey ball, which found... who did it find first? They found Tomiyasu. Tomiyasu plays a lovely header. Do you know what? It was reminiscent to the goal that we conceded against Lens in the Champions League. A lovely header to Havertz. Havertz holds it up really well, lays it off to Martinelli. You know what he's going to do the moment that ball lands to him, to his feet. He, opens it up, strikes it really well. It's going on target. And, this was a game where it was always going to be won either on an error, a moment of magic, or a bit of luck. And we got that bit of luck, deservedly so, because we were the team that were going for it, as you said, right until the very end, asking the questions, raising the bar when it needed to be raised. You made the point that you didn't feel like any team deserved to lose. I would argue that both teams did deserve to lose based on the approach that they made. I felt like if, that kind of static football that they were playing, for me, those substitutions proved that actually City weren't as good as we're making them out to be. Actually, City were quite poor. And if we made the approach, if we decided to just throw a little bit more intensity at them, they would have crumbled. Ifs, buts, and maybes. Again, this is just the observation of me.
If you look at when we went forward a few times, what Ederson is exceptional at, and I guess we all know how good of a kicker he is, and we see those balls out of his hands where he can ping it the length of the pitch and it lands bang on someone's foot. And it's what like when you had Mahrez in the team and you just had that silky first touch every time. We would see the highlights reels, but what I think people don't appreciate with Ederson is that mid-range passing. We know he can comfortably pass around the back four. Great feet, can do that. He can pass long. But what he's really good at, and we saw him starting to do it when we were putting pressure on, he just chips it over. Gets it right to his man's feet in the middle of the park. They turn and they run at you. So I do think if by going at them more aggressively, leaving spaces in the pitch, and even when those changes happened, we didn't just up the intensity. We kept playing our game, and ultimately it won us the game. But it was one of those, like, I think both teams were really, really good today, and it was so disciplined. But playing with that level of concentration is extremely difficult. But look, that doesn't excite fans, and people will always judge performances and the level of performances on creativity. But the things like standing on the ball and inviting players to come at you, it was something Raya was doing. Ultimately, it didn't really work with Raya today. And although, look, I think Raya actually deserves quite a bit of credit, because he was really, really poor. He had a horrible start to this game, but he managed to compose himself and get himself back in the zone. Because there was a point I was thinking Arteta's going to have to hook him. If Arteta really believes in what he said about substituting a goalkeeper, there was a point where I was thinking, I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to invite the press and then play through it. And he's putting his foot in the ball and he wants City. That's why he's taking so many touches. And Onana did it against us in the United game, where he was trying to get us to come at him so he could ping that ball around the park. Raya was trying to do it today, and it wasn't working for us. It was a clear tactical decision, but it wasn't working. And he managed to get himself back into the game, because I thought he was lost. There was a point where I was thinking that unsteadiness, that kind of rashness that's kind of creeping into his game, especially there were like multiple points when the Alvarez moment and so on. it was like he's lost here. He needs to get himself back in the game. And he had one big punch from a corner, and great punch, got the ball out. He collected a couple of times from corners as well, really smooth handling. And it almost felt like he needed something with his hands to compose himself with his feet. And after that, I thought he was quite good, but like not exceptional, but good. Because in those first 20 minutes, he was completely lost, and it would have been very easy for him to start hiding, stop playing his game, and just start hoofing it long. And that's what we've seen Ramsdale do. So I think he does deserve a lot of credit for the way he recomposed himself and got himself back into that game, because how many times have we seen Arsenal players over the years when something goes wrong in the first 15, 20 minutes, they hide, they stop doing what they're told to do, they just completely crumble in games. Whereas I thought it was a real like showcase of Raya's character today, because to bring yourself back in and like drag yourself out of the hole he was in, that shows a lot of mental strength. And I think having Saliba and Gabriel in front of you is a big help. We're not talking about Socrates and David Luiz anymore. We're talking about two top quality centre backs, but it was a testament to his personality today that he was able to drag himself back out of that, because you're playing against the best side in world football and you've just had a real stinker for the first 20 minutes of the game. What are you going to do? It's sink or swim, and ultimately I think he swam today.
Well, ultimately I think he floated in
Yeah, but it is one of those. He could have sunk into that hole and continued to have a really bad game, but he managed to drag himself back out. And it's one of those. He got away with the mistakes, and he was able to
ultimately
pick himself back up.
This does beg the question, though, of if we're judging Arteta by his principles and by his standards, what happens going into Chelsea? Because this is a unique situation for Arsenal. You're forgetting that we've got two number one keepers, essentially, two top keepers. This isn't a situation where you've got a second string keeper who's trying to play first team football. Both top keepers here. What happens with Ramsdale? Surely he's going to think that the boss is going to put him back in the starting lineup for Chelsea.
I think Raya keeps his place because of the way he was able to bring himself back round. So a huge part of football is how you react. A huge part of life is how you react to mistakes. And the people that are the best are able to react to mistakes. You're never going to play a game of football without a single mistake. You're never going to go through a whole season with a keeper not making any mistakes. And Raya had a really poor opening 20 minutes and not the best first half, but he really grew into that game and he was able to compose himself. And I think that will count for a lot. So had he continued up to half time having as poor a game as he was in the first 20, I think Arteta, if he genuinely believes in what he says, would have had to hook him. But he was able to bring himself back round. And ultimately, as the game went on, he did become a steady head at the back and he was pinging some lovely passes around. And I thought in the second half he was very good after what was a horrendous 20-minute spell at the start of the game where I was thinking he's going to cost us this match.
Yeah, it could have went another way as well. I mean, I'm just having a look at his stats, and 29 out of 43 accurate passes at 67%, and only 10 out of 24 long accurate balls. So, I just think for Ramsdale's sake, he needs to be given a shot now. I think that if you look at the next two fixtures Arsenal have got, which is Chelsea away and then Sevilla, is Sevilla at home? Sevilla away as well. He has to play somewhere,
It is worth noting
if you end up playing,
that accurate pass number, that percentage is still higher than what Ramsdale's was last season. So it's long accurate passes is a funny stat, and this was why I was really reluctant to buy into it whenever we were talking about Raya at the start of the season, and we were looking at his completions of long passes. He had Ivan Toney to aim for. If you look at his long passes to Gabriel Jesus with any defender on him can be 5 foot taller than him. Jesus comes away with the ball a lot of the time. Nketiah is never there on time to challenge. This is what he actually did well against Bournemouth last week. He was there to challenge. But these are the areas of his game where I'm looking at and thinking, yes, I thought he was good today. He worked really hard, but he needs to be arriving on time to win these headers, to compete, to challenge for them. And that's where you'll see Raya's numbers increase if we have a striker. If we have Jesus in the middle, Saka is very good in the air, very good at winning those duels as well, as is Martinelli. Having those three on the pitch, we will see a far better pass completion rate from Raya with those long passes because he's putting the ball in the right areas. It's just, I really struggle with Nketiah as a 9 for that reason, because I don't think he wins enough duels. I don't think he has enough intent to his play to really be a top striker. And whilst I think there's a lot of things that he's good at, I think I'm not fully judging Nketiah in the same way as I'll hold a Saka or a Martinelli or Jesus to a certain standard. I think I've realised Nketiah is only ever going to be a certain standard for Arsenal. And
Yeah.
I think I'm probably judging him slightly to a lower standard that I would hold other players to. And I think he is the obvious one that we can upgrade on. But at the same time, I think with Kai Havertz there comes a point where you think Havertz has looked good as a 9 anytime he's played there for Arsenal. Perhaps it's time to throw him in and actually use him as a 9 rather than as a left 8, because right now that's not really working.
I agree. Okay, and so we arrive at the point of the show where it's now time for... That's right, it's time for good, bad, where we will give our good, and our bad moments of the game. So Adam, why don't you start us off by giving us your good moment of the game?
I'm going to go Ben White, nutmeg and Doku, because
Yes,
White was tremendous today. The consistency of Ben White's first touch, I need to say this, unbelievable. Like, no matter where he gets the ball, he takes it with such ease and such grace. And it's something that I don't think people ever really talk about, but Ben White shut down 2 completely different wingers today. He was just immense the whole game, and I think that came at a point where we were 1-0 up and he just sticks it through his legs and it's like, see you later, mate.
Yeah.
And the thing was, he's just nutmegged him. Ben White was just like, yeah, I do that all the time, mate. Like, no, didn't care. Just like, I knocked it off to a teammate, and it's just such a Ben White thing. He is becoming Mr. Reliable for Arsenal. The consistency of his game is so good that we've just become accustomed to this, and that's the best team in world football. And Ben White's dealt with 2 completely different players and done it with ease. He was one of our best players today, and he does this every week. So yeah, that was a really good moment for me, and one that I loved seeing. So what's your good moment?
Yeah, I do love how we don't put Ben White on a pedestal, and I hope it continues because, like I said, the way that he plays without the added pressure of being expected to perform. Also, a massive happy birthday to him. So, nice little present for him. My good moment of the game is seeing William Saliba tussle with Erling Haaland and win those battles. And I think there was a specific moment where they're both shoulder to shoulder and he just nudges him out of the way. And Haaland ends up on the floor, and it's just like, wow, are you even human at this point? So yeah, it's just so nice to see. So that's my good moment of the game. What about your good moment?
It has to be the goal. Just brilliant. The emotion, the fear as well that I had, just like, it was like a cyclone of emotions where everything was like, it's just like, yeah, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And so it has to be that. And obviously the way we restarted and just switched straight back on and didn't let that emotion affect us. So, I mean, my heart was in my mouth, but I didn't feel like any of the players had that fear or emotion. There was a real maturity about the team. So the goal has to be my moment, and the follow on from that whole thing. What about you?
Yeah, I was going to say my good moment would have been the period after we scored the goal, which was hanging on. And, it never seemed... I mean, you were saying how you had to quickly calm yourself down. Whereas me, on the other hand, when the goal went in, I was like, this is ours. This is ours to lose. I've got full confidence that these boys are going to be able to get it past the line. And they made it look so comfortable and so relaxing. You know, unlike the opening half an hour of the game where it was just like, you know, really nerve-wracking and just not knowing what to expect. I didn't feel like City were capable of breaking us down the moment we scored that goal. Just the euphoria, and you just feel the tension leaving. The stadium erupted, and everyone was, you know, finally. It's like we needed that at the beginning of the game, but we didn't. But it was fine because the final 10 minutes, it allowed us to just get the game done. And so, yeah, even with those 4 minutes added on, I felt like we could have played another 2 minutes and we would have been all right. Yeah, it was written. You know, it was our day, and we finally, you know, managed to unlock that final hurdle in the Premier League. Anyway, you know, we had to overcome so many different hurdles when Arteta first came in, and this was the last one. And hopefully, we're now on the right course to make a real mount for that title. Okay, good stuff. Oh, before we go, just a matter of the bad moment of the game. So, Adam, do you have a bad moment that you'd like to
I think
highlight?
we have to point it out again. Michael Oliver, bad moment has to be that second yellow. How he doesn't give it. First one, I'm happy with it being a yellow. I think it was one of those, it could have gone as a red, but just like, it wasn't. How you can have almost a perfect view of that and not give it as a yellow card. It just insane. And it was also on Declan Rice, a player that doesn't go down very easily, who, by the way, actually, one thing we didn't say, Declan Rice's tackle towards the end of the game, I think it's Foden running through the middle, and Rice runs back, scoop tackles Wan-Bissaka style, and just turns and just knocks it off. Another just superb performance, but that...
he does it twice. He does it again, and then he lays off Martinelli. Martinelli has a shot, and it's saved. So, he does that twice, actually.
So, but yeah, what's your bad moment of the game?
Unsurprisingly, my bad moment is is unfortunately David Raya. And yeah, just not a good day at the office today. He redeemed himself at the end with the win, but I think anything other than had the result gone, even if we had come out with that game with a draw, we'd be highlighting and we'd be talking about it a lot more. But thankfully, we got the goal, we got the 3 points, and so we can move on into the international break with some positivity. I'm just hoping that none of our players suffer any more injuries. Hopefully, you know, coming off that international break, we have a really good run of games, actually. So I'm hoping a really positive run. Obviously, Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, it might be a tricky one. Sheffield United, Newcastle. Okay, fine. We don't really have a simple, straightforward. I mean, on paper, when I was looking at teams like Burnley, Sheffield United, Wolves, it looks Luton as well. It looks nice, but we'll take it one game at a time. Okay, good stuff. So, it's that time of the show again where we must say goodbye. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's listened up until this point. Thank you very, very much. If you did enjoy this episode, please do give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Let us know what you thought of the show by reaching out to us on Twitter. You can find us over there at Arsenal Therapy. You can also find Adam over there at AdamKeys_, and you can find myself over there at Gunner96. As always, we will be back next week to give you your usual weekly dose of Arsenal Therapy. But if you can't wait until then, make sure to head over to the Arsenal Therapy YouTube channel for the 15-minute show, where we'll be taking you through all the latest bits of Arsenal update, and that is on a Tuesday morning. Okay. Also, make sure to head over to the Arsenal Therapy website too for the blog post, where we'll be breaking down all of our thoughts and feelings on this game and much, much more. So, until then, take care, have yourselves a lovely week, and hopefully a nice international break, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.